although it's very pink and obvious.
10 seconds.
Let's just pretend it's not there.
It's like 5, 4, 3,
And we're live!
2.
We're not reviewed the stress.
2, 1. Okay.
So hi, we are
I'll
live.
let you know when the thing goes live.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a delay when it goes live. So okay, it's like go.
Hi, we're live here with the Da Vinci Group.
Hello, hi.
And would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Amu. I'm the COO and co-founder of Da Vinci Group.
Hi everyone, I'm Joshna, Chief Technical Officer of Da Vinci Group.
Okay, so what is the Da Vinci Group?
Well, it's a company that my partner and I started in 2012. So my background is in clinical neuropsychology and Sarah's background is in neurobiology. I kind of dabbled in pottery for a bit and we realized that there's a lot of tactile things that's happening when we actually touch clay. So using that and going back into the research of how all of this works, this tactile memory sort of thing, we discovered this thing called neuroeducation, which is actually a subset of neuroscience. And what it says is that when we actually use our senses to process information, we are at a biological level making associations that your neurons otherwise won't do. So using that concept, all of our programs are built based on neuroeducation. So we've got NeuroCeramics, which is using clay as a medium to actually teach and learn. And then we've got neurotheatre, which we use process drama to actually do our programs. And then a few other things that are in incubation. So we do these programs for children from 18 months. We do it for adults in the corporate world, and we do it for the elderly. And we've got a product called the Clay Kit. Yes.
So that's live video in the back. Hey, keep going.
Okay, so briefly describe about NeuroCeramics. I think we're all interested about that.
So NeuroCeramics it's what if you break up the word itself, it's neuro and ceramics. So the neuro part comes from the study of neuroeducation, looking at really how the brain optimally learns. And what we got from that is when you work with your hands, especially the sense of touch, and there's a direct hand-to-brain activation, and the learning is really very real. It's tangible. It's no longer conceptual. And ceramics, of course, is when you bring in the clay. So what NeuroCeramics does is you bring in different kinds of conversations, topics, any kind of theme really. And when you introduce the clay, your brain's kind of going on a roller coaster because the clay medium, it's got a life of its own. The more you touch it, it's soft and squishy. The more you work with it, it becomes hard and dry. And really, you're constantly invigorated by that sensation. So learning while working with clay changes the process because your brain's more engaged, you're more alert, and memory retention is actually a lot higher when you're working with clay. So NeuroCeramics puts these two together in the classroom space.
So can NeuroCeramics be used to counter stress among students?
I think totally, because there's just the property of clay, You've played with clay before, and I think people who have played with clay before kind of will attest to the fact that it's very, very calming by virtue of the fact that it's a very malleable, soft, cold sort of thing that changes textures as you're using it. And that has been shown to emotionally regulate people. And also when you're stressed out, like in the early days when I was just doing pottery for myself, I found that if you had a really sort of packed day or something of that sort, and I went to class, that whole sort of process of using the clay to sort of just do everything, free expression whatsoever, really kind of calmed the mind. So for sure, it's a stress buster. And in the same while, increasing your creativity.
That's really good actually. And so can adults also enjoy the benefits of NeuroCeramics?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time we've actually conducted programs when it's parent and child together, it's quite funny because the parents actually get more into it. It's harder to get the clay away from them. Usually with kids, they've got the attention span and they engage in that maybe 30 to 45 minutes when we work with very young children. But then when you have the parents doing it side by side with them, it really is quite difficult to get the clay away. They want to do more, and they keep asking me questions about how can I do this, how can I do that. So adults get even more captivated, I would say.
So even in the same vein, when we do our programs for adults, like with the corporates and so on and so forth, we see a wide range of childlike wonder, basically, in trying to explore the medium, and also trying to figure out how to make a certain thing look a certain way. So it's definitely captivating at all levels, I would say.
So for the programs, what programs are available to those interested in NeuroCeramics?
Well, we have our programs for the kids that we actually run in preschools, but we also do our regular programs at our venue collaborator, Treehouse. So that happens on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday sort of thing, as well as a Saturday, and they just have to let us know. It's usually in the mornings from 10 to 12, and we have an afternoon slot from 3 to 5. Other than that, for children, what else do we have?
So we do holiday programs and workshops as well. So aside from just regular class programs, we come in during the holiday period where it really is looking at how learning is fun.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning has to be a certain way. So yeah, it's holiday programs in different spaces.
We've also got our clay kit, which maybe we should show. There we go, play kit and play box. So if you're looking for, there's so many considerations that come into play when people are thinking about going for a class and all of that. The clay kit and the play box kind of allows you to actually have that experience at home. So you don't have to come for a class or anything, and there is a guidebook inside where you can follow. And the clay is not something that needs to be fired in a kiln. It is really high-grade air-dry clay that can dry up if you've left it out for like 48 hours and so on, and after that you can paint it. So you can have the experience right at home. You don't really need to come for a class if that's inconvenient for you.
This essentially put NeuroCeramics in a box so that you could do it in your own living room and do it when you would not want to head out to do something, but you actually want to just get into clay. It takes away the notion of clay being inaccessible as well. So we've put it into a box and made it so mobile. There's no reason for you not to be able to do it.
So how long is a typical session of NeuroCeramics in a day?
Usually when we do it in schools, it's for an hour. Usually when we encourage you to use the clay kit and so on, you can go on from an hour to an hour and a half. Really depends on how long you're into it. And you can even leave it and come back to it at a later date. But yeah, an hour typically. When we do our facilitated sessions for older children and so on, it's between 2 to 3 hours.
2 to 3 hours, nice. So I think a lot of us had the same question in mind. Is NeuroCeramics costly?
Is it costly?
Yeah.
I think compared to a lot of the other programs, it is on par. I think educational programs out there usually cost between $200 to $300 a month. Our sessions are priced at $50 per session per child if you're coming for a NeuroCeramics session. If you wanted to get the play box or the clay kit, it's priced at $180 and $200. That kind of works out for $45 and $50. So they're all comparable. What else can I tell you about the price? I can tell you that the value of what you get is definitely far supersedes the price, because the learning opportunity there, when the kids come back and sort of tell us that they remember things from just seeing what they've created, and parents come back and tell us that, oh, you know what, they were talking about the certain topic that you were talking about. Like, for example, we had a child who was discovering the different parts of the world. And we were talking about Mumbai in one of the lessons, and the mom, I had a conversation with her, and then she said, he's been talking about Mumbai and stuff, so I extended that learning by bringing them to the library and so on. That's like, wow, extended learning, really, imprinting in your brain, you know? So it's really, really great that we're able to do that with NeuroCeramics. And more importantly, I think that it's a very, very novel idea. Lots of learning sort of pedagogies are very, very different from what neuroeducation-based programs are. And it's that novel factor that I think is really going to be shaping the way things are done in the future. So there's an opportunity for everyone to jump on board.
Okay, just like to remind the viewers, we are live with Da Vinci Group.
Hello.
Okay, so moving forward, are there any other additional health benefits other than stress relief with NeuroCeramics?
What we've noticed really is its increased attention span. That's one big thing that I've noticed. increase attention span, and they get very creative when trying to build things that, you know, you'll notice in the classroom space, for example, maybe I say to just build a pot. Suddenly you'll notice different ways of them coming up with a pot. Or one way that we also sort of bring up is how do you illustrate maybe making a triangle, and then you'll have individuals creating that one shape in a whole variety of ways. So there's creativity, there's attention span, there's also just being calm. It invokes a sense of calm because there's something that sort of captivates your attention with the material, and you sort of forget everything else.
Yeah, I agree.
And you're just engaged in working with clay.
Aside from that, I also can say that it helps your dexterity and fine motor skills. So when we work with the elderly, that's also something that comes up because they get more sort of nimble with their fingers. What other things? There's a whole host of good stuff that comes with using clay that is very, very progressive and built upon each session and so on and so forth. So you can also get strength in your fingers. And that's something that a lot of parents have also sort of told us after their children have experienced clay.
So, with the students, right, how is there usually like a very popular kind of artwork that they will create, like leaning more towards like certain style?
Interesting.
Well, a natural sort of tendency is to pancake.
Pancake, huh?
Yeah, a natural tendency is to pancake. They'll sort of like grab the clay, and the very first thing they want to do, like it's almost instinctual, they just want to kind of thump it down or drum on it and make big pancakes. And then, especially after we hand out tools, they like to draw in it. So that's one thing that I've noticed as a favorite, or rather, it's just
a natural way of exploring it.
Yeah, it's a natural way of exploring it. That's something that always comes up.
And at some point, they will associate it with food, and there's a scientific reason for that because when we first start exploring, we are always exploring with our mouths, all right? And food is a very, very primary thing that we need for survival and so on. So when you notice the younger ones from 18 months onwards, when they start exploring clay with their hands, they will be moving their mouths as well because of the texture of the clay. So it's very, very natural for them to make fish balls or lollipops and stuff like that, aside from the little craft activity that we always inbuilt into our curriculum.
Okay, so we're going to jump into some Q&A from our viewers.
Okay.
So the first question, do I need to be artistic to do this?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Absolutely not.
So I began absolutely not from an artistic background, but I've just worked with the material for such a long time now, and I've just found my own way of expressing it, and it's really, it's your form of self-expression. Creativity is not measured in any kind of scale. You don't have to be artistic and define it in a certain way. It really is how you want to express yourself.
Yeah.
So another question from another viewer. How does it help my child increase their school marks?
Great question. Okay, so we've got a lot of people asking us about, okay, how does this translate to grades and so on. At the end of the day, it's really about looking at the long-term picture. And if you want to look at where education is really going right now, you want your children to be worldly wise. You want them to be able to actually succeed in a working world, you know, be really, really responsible human beings and so on. So the short answer is, I can't tell you that if you did this, your marks are going to be higher, but I can tell you that it's building on skills that is necessary for your child to be actually very, very successful in the world. For example, abstract thinking, problem solving, creativity. If you look at the working world right now, and because we work with the corporates, there's always a common lament that, you know, the Asians are not as creative as people from maybe other parts of the world and so on. They have inhibitions in speaking out and sort of holding their own ground, even in the board arena and so on and so forth. And I can attest to the fact that our children who's been through the program, they really look at things in a very, very different way. So if you're looking for a more long-term sort of flourishing perspective for your child, and not just at the end of the day getting marks in PSLE and all of that, which I can tell you if you started way beyond, like at least if you had like 6 months to a year of NeuroCeramics or any sort of that sort of artistic sort of work, you're going to see some results in a different form. Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from a viewer, Ross.
Yes.
What inspired you to facilitate these sessions?
Oh, that's a great question, Ross. So, I'll tell you the whole story. So when I studied in university and I did my master's in clinical neuropsychology, I specialized in that. It was a psychology by research degree, and then I came into the working world. I was really sort of stuck with the fact that, hey, I'm not really applying whatever I've learned. And it was more like an existential crisis that I think a lot of youngsters who come out of university go through. And I was just really lucky in that things just kind of fell into place, and that I discovered pottery as a hobby at first, and then I was able to apply what I learned in order to actually sort of put Da Vinci Group together. So I married my interests in pottery as well as clinical neuropsychology to actually come up with this idea, because at the end of the day, we want our children to be able to really survive in the world that we're living in right now, a rapidly changing world. And I guess that was what sort of really inspired me to start this. We started with the children's arm of things, and then we realized that the corporates really started writing in to us and asking us about programs and so on. And then we realized that, wow, this extends to the elderly, and why not bring this to the rest of the world through the clay kit? So that's how this whole thing started.
Okay, so another question from another viewer.
Yay, I'm
Sorry,
liking
there's quite a lot coming in.
Yay.
So how can ceramics help my child cope with stress?
Okay, great. By the virtue of the fact that clay is that sort of a medium where you can really sort of vent, I think, right?
You can
squeeze, you can thump it, you can, if you needed to. That sort of allows for that sort of frustrations to come out. Charge, did you have something to add to that?
The one thing that keeps coming to mind is sometimes you have kids who are restless, or they just don't know where they channel their energy.
Yeah.
And it helps them just put it in that. That's what's coming to mind when I hear this question and how you describe, how clay really helps with stress or helps with tension.
Yeah, and more so than anything else, I think at the end of the day, after they've done all that, you can still create something out of it. That in itself is maybe like, if you want to look at it from a different perspective, it's all that channeling and and then you've got this thing that you've created, Yeah.
Okay, so this is from a viewer, Wan Ling.
Yeah.
What is the curriculum like?
What's the curriculum like?
So, if you're going to talk about topics and themes, it's a whole sort of variety of things. A popular kind of curriculum that we've conducted before is very much related to animal habitats and wildlife, because it's so sensorial. You get to see things, you hear things, you feel things, and then you sort of translate that into clay. But how the curriculum works in itself, is like if I were to give you an illustration of how a class works, is there's a lot of conversation at the beginning. There are prompters, there are discussions, there are things that I would share with the children, or even with youth and youngsters, get their feedback and their opinion about it, or get their thoughts about it. And then that sort of channels a interactive sort of learning process. It's not one way. And then I bring in the clay, so that it doesn't sort of get mundane where I'm just sort of standing at the front and delivering a speech. So I bring in the clay and I get to work with it, and that changes it and makes it more, there's a lot more authority in you creating with it, and you're taking ownership of that learning process. So you're creating, you're building, and that comes to the end of it. So that's usually how a 1.5 hour program runs like.
We usually have a lot of visual stimulation as well, and auditory stimulation as well, so that whole learning process comes together in a very holistic way.
Okay, so we have more questions coming in.
Yay.
This is from Shio. How did you get into this field?
How did I get into this field? Okay, it was serendipity, for lack of a better word. So I have to say, it happened in the shower, okay? I have to say, this was my moment, okay? I had discovered pottery, and then I knew I had this clinical neuropsychology background, and my husband was there sort of saying, you should do something about this, you should do something about this. And voila, it just came to me that, I am so blessed to be able to discover this right now when I'm so young, and it would be such a waste not to impact the world with it. So literally in that showering moment, I said, okay, I'm going to take action towards putting this together, see where it goes, and just have the courage to really dive into it. So that's how it really happened.
Shower thoughts.
Shower thoughts.
Okay, so another question from Elaine. Can this help my child to lose weight?
Interesting question. And interesting that you bring this up, because we've just gotten, given that my background is in psychology, we've just gotten a request to actually figure out how we can create programs for children or even young adults who are going through some sort of eating disorder or anxiety around eating and so on. And that's an area that we are just looking into, seeing as how the tactile sort of quality of clays really has impact on the brain. I don't think it would be very long before we design something to see whether clay might help in figuring out what are the different coping mechanisms people use to actually regulate stress. A lot of it comes from stress, I think, and elevated cortisol levels and so on. And even if you want to talk about sensory disorders and so on and so forth, right? Psychologists and clinical field people, practitioners have said that there is something about clay that really needs to be explored to see whether there might be things that can come up, can help this in the future. So akan datang. Yes.
Okay, so we have another question from Shio again. Thank you for watching attentively. How receptive have people been to this? And are there any criticisms or myths?
Okay. You want to come from your perspective and then I'll talk from the founder's perspective.
So how receptive it's been is when I first came in, and I've been here for about a year, I was skeptical. I was skeptical about how is it that I use clay as a medium. So I'm taking away pen and paper. I'm taking away, the screen really, taking away the computer and my keypad, and just working with clay. I was very skeptical. And
she didn't tell me this before,
Abu just told me to walk into the pottery room, sit there and work with clay. And as I created it, I realized that, like I've mentioned this quite a bit throughout this conversation, that it does something miraculous about attention span, and your focus just changes. When that happened, I'm like, okay, something has happened here. So it was in experiencing it that I realized how important my hand is and how important it was engaging myself. Then from there, I wanted to see how I could apply this for children, how I could use it in a classroom environment. And every time I walk into a classroom space, there's different challenges each and every time. And clay changes that conversation almost immediately. After that, when I actually return a work to the child and they hold on to it, I actually have them describe things that we were talking about maybe in a session that was 3 or 4 weeks prior. And in that, basically my understanding of how NeuroCeramics works is, it works. Literally, it works. Give the child that tangible product. I mean, I have a 3-year-old tell me that when we were creating a wind chime, a wind chime that looked like a fish, we were talking about the monsoon season. That's what the conversation was, and that was the final creation that came out of it, and how they were talking about the way the wind moved. So it's amazing how you create these kind of connections, and I've got a 3-year-old child describing this to me. So that was my reception of it. I was a skeptic. That completely changed, and I think the most important factor in that change is you have to experience it yourself.
Yes. From a founder's perspective, when we first started this business, it was difficult because we are ahead of the curve, and no one has done it before like us in the world, I dare say, because there's so much of research, 15 to 20 years of research in the US and the UK, and they pumped in $1 billion, but they've looked at many different mediums. So what Sarah and I have done is that we've really looked at clay particularly and how it extends the learning in neuroeducation. So people were interested, but they were skeptical, and because of the fact that you've got to experience it, they didn't get it. As much as we spoke concept, they didn't get it until they actually experienced it and that aha moment came. So it was difficult, I wouldn't deny it, but now I think in 5 years on, people have become more receptive because they're looking for that science in a pedagogy. And the best part is that neuroeducation is based on science. So we are turning, I think the tide is turning, and people who have experienced us keep coming back. And that's the best part because they've seen the magic of NeuroCeramics.
Okay, so we have another question from a viewer, and how can we fit classes for busy parents?
Okay. Play kit, play box, right?
I was just gonna say, busy parent will definitely have, even if it's a half an hour after a meal time, you're sitting around, before you're getting back into your work, opening up your textbooks or your assignment books, there is going to be that little gap where you're not doing anything. You just kind of want to relax. And play offers like that.
Yeah.
You can just sit with it, you can just sit back in your couch, roll with it in your hands and just make something. And it doesn't even have to be something that you want to eventually use, but even just using the material as to just work your hands.
Yeah. So you don't have to be sitting there for an hour doing this. You can even do it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You can go through part of the curriculum with the clay kit or the play box, or not even go through it.
Yeah.
And just take it from like, how was your day? What was a moment that really sort of made you happy in your day? You know, that could be the conversation. And it could be, the best part is if you do this as a family at home, it really, really, really is great for family bonding. So that's how you can fit it in your busy day.
So I would like to thank you viewers for all your questions.
Yes.
So for you, would you guys like to show us around to end off this live session?
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. We'll show you around. We just had a workshop, so I don't know what the state of the inside is, but come along. I think they've cleaned up nicely. Okay, so this is our second floor where we usually have all our workshops. It's a little dark over there, but let's just go on in. So we've set this area up to sort of show a little bit about, the different stages of pottery. So you've seen like some tools and some glazes, this is what they really look like. You've got some works to show you. And then you've got the various pottery at different stages over here. You can have a close-up as you go in. And then this is our studio space.
I cannot see.
Just gonna pop on the lights. So this space can easily hold about 50 people, right? And then we usually, we're moving towards having more adult programs done over here. Because for the children, we want to use Treehouse as a location primarily. And it's a comfortable space. And then this is our play kits. We've got tons of play kits here that's just waiting to be displayed. And we usually sort of change this up into a display section when we have events and so on. So the next big event that's going to happen is our play kit launch.
On the 22nd of September.
On the 22nd of September, yes.
It's going to be a launch really of bringing play kit and the play box out into the world of all of you.
Yes, so yeah, this is our space.
So thank you very much for having us, and if you guys would like to sign up, the viewers would like to sign up with us, visit caregiverasia.com.
Thank you very much, Caregiver Asia, for actually featuring us. People at DBG are really, really very blessed with our collaboration. And yeah, if you have any more questions, you can find us on Facebook.
Yep. Thank you so much for watching us.
Thank you.
Bye!